The trap of approval, why we try to please everyone. Have you ever stopped to wonder why you care so deeply about what others think of you? This isn't a modern problem. It's a human one. From childhood, we're taught to seek approval. We learn to impress teachers, earn praise from parents, and avoid disappointing anyone around us. Over time, this desire grows. We begin to shape our words, our actions, and even our identities just to be accepted. But the Stoics would call this a kind of slavery. Epictetus, once a slave in body, but never in mind, said it clearly. If you want to be free, don't wish for things to happen as you want them to. Wish for them to happen as they do. To seek approval is to wish for other people's thoughts, opinions, and emotions to align with our hopes. But those things are not within our control. No matter how carefully we act or speak, we cannot decide how someone else will see us. And in trying to please everyone, we give away the very thing Stoicism treasures most, our inner freedom. Approval feels like comfort. Praise feels like safety. But the cost is high. We begin to lose our connection to ourselves. We do things not because they are right or true, but because they are popular or acceptable. We say yes when we mean no. We stay silent when our conscience begs us to speak. We dress, speak, and live according to standards that are not ours, standards shaped by culture, trends, or fear of judgment. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome and philosopher king, observed this truth in his private journal. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Imagine that. We care more about the thoughts of people we may never know deeply than about the voice within our own hearts. Stoicism teaches us to reverse this order. The only approval that matters is your own, not based on pride or ego, but based on whether you are living in harmony with reason and virtue. Are you being honest with yourself? Are you doing what you believe is right, regardless of applause? Seneca, the Roman philosopher and statesman, warned against living a second-hand life, a life directed by the opinions of others. He wrote, "What difference does it make how many people praise you if you have no respect for yourself?" The Stoics were not concerned with being admired. They were concerned with being free, free from the chaos of emotional dependency, free from the noise of crowds, free from the burden of pretending to be someone they were not. People-pleasing, in the Stoic view, is not kindness, it's insecurity. It comes not from love, but from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of criticism, fear of not belonging. But Stoicism offers a powerful reminder. You already belong to yourself. No one can take away your dignity unless you give it up. No one can truly define your worth unless you surrender that judgment to them. The Stoic path is not about arrogance or isolation. It's about autonomy. It's about living in such a way that your peace depends only on things within your control, your thoughts, your values, your actions. The moment you stop chasing approval is the moment you start claiming your true self. So ask yourself honestly, who am I when no one is watching? Would I still choose this path if no one clapped? Do I want to be admired or to be free? The Stoics would answer with clarity, live with truth, speak with courage, walk with dignity, and let the world think what it will, because the one who no longer needs approval is already free. The Stoic view of self-ownership. What does it mean to truly own yourself? In a world where we can own houses, cars, phones, and bank accounts, we rarely pause to ask, do I even own my own mind? To the Stoics, self-ownership was not about property or possessions. It was about something far more sacred, the ability to govern your own thoughts, choices, and character. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." The Stoic message is clear. Everything you truly need is already inside you, but only if you learn how to claim it. For the Stoics, self-ownership begins with recognizing where your power lies. You cannot control the economy, other people, or random events, but you can control your perspective, your decisions, and how you respond. This small but powerful realm, the space of your own mind, is your true kingdom. Epictetus, born into slavery, taught that real freedom has nothing to do with social status. He lived in chains, yet felt freer than the emperors of his time. Why? Because he ruled himself. He did not let anger, fear, or desire make his decisions for him. He had nothing, yet he possessed everything that mattered. To be the owner of yourself means to be the master of your emotions, your tongue, your habits, and your inner life. It means standing in the storm without letting it break your integrity. It means not selling your soul for popularity, comfort, or approval. As Epictetus reminded his students, no man is free who is not master of himself. Modern life tempts us to outsource our identity. We seek opinions from strangers before we trust our own. We scroll through social media for meaning. We let likes and followers shape our self-worth. But the Stoics would ask, why give away what is yours to things that will never last? You don't need to be anyone else. You don't need to prove anything to the crowd. The Stoic view of self-ownership says, your value does not come from outside. It comes from your nature as a rational, moral being. This isn't about perfection. It's about alignment, living in harmony with reason and virtue, saying what you mean, doing what you believe, being who you are, even when no one is watching. Seneca, the great Stoic writer, believed that most people don't live, they merely exist. He said they drift through life, controlled by their surroundings. But the Stoic is different. The Stoic wakes up each day and chooses their path, not based on fear or desire, but based on principle. To own yourself is to walk with quiet dignity. It's to say, no matter what happens outside me, I choose who I will be inside. This doesn't mean being cold or isolated. On the contrary, the Stoic is fully engaged with life. But they engage from a place of inner steadiness. They give without needing return. They speak the truth, even if it's unpopular. They know that the opinions of others may change, fortunes may rise or fall, but character endures. When you own yourself, you become unshakable. Not because you're untouched by life's storms, but because your anchor is inside, not outside. Imagine a person like that. Imagine waking up and not being ruled by the need to impress, not being hijacked by every emotion, not being at the mercy of every headline or comment. That is the power the Stoics spoke of. That is self-ownership. And here's the most liberating truth. No one can give it to you, and no one can take it away. It's yours the moment you decide to live with awareness, responsibility, and truth. So ask yourself, who really owns your life, your values, your choices? Do you live by what you believe or by what others expect? And what would change if you took full ownership of your mind today? The Stoics would say, start now. The world can take many things from you, but it cannot take the one thing that truly matters unless you give it away. Own yourself, and you will never be a slave again. How people's judgments are beyond your control. What others think of you is none of your business. At first, that sounds harsh, maybe even wrong. After all, we're taught from a young age to care what others think, to seek approval, to avoid embarrassment, to keep our image under control. But the Stoics remind us of a simple, liberating truth. You cannot control the thoughts of another human being, and trying to do so only makes you a prisoner. Epictetus said it best. Remember that it is not he who gives abuse or blows who insults, but the view we take of these things as insulting. In other words, the sting of criticism is not in the words themselves, but in how we receive them. The judgment of others doesn't define us unless we let it. What actually hurts us is our own interpretation, our need for approval, our fear of rejection. Imagine being free of that. Imagine not needing to explain yourself, justify your choices, or win over people who were never meant to understand you. That's not arrogance, it's clarity, it's strength, and it's the Stoic way. People will judge, always. Some will misunderstand your silence as rudeness. Others will see your kindness as weakness. Some will love you for what you are, and others will criticize you for the same reason. But here's what the Stoics taught. Their judgment belongs to them, not to you. The moment you start shaping your life to fit other people's opinions, you give them power over you. You let their moods dictate your peace. Their approval becomes your currency, and your soul pays the price. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, knew this well. Surrounded by politics, pressure, and public scrutiny, he still wrote in his journal, "The approval of others, it's a trap." He reminded himself, day after day, that truth is not decided by popular vote, that his job was not to be admired, but to live in accordance with nature and reason. It's easy to forget that, especially in today's world where attention is currency and image is everything. We want to be seen, liked, followed. But Stoicism asks, at what cost? If you silence your voice to fit the crowd, you may gain applause, but lose yourself. If you hide your values to avoid judgment, you may avoid conflict, but create an inner war. If you bend your truth to be accepted, You may find approval, but not peace. The Stoics remind us that there's only one judge whose opinion truly matters: your own conscience. Did you act with integrity? Did you speak honestly? Did you stay true to what you know is right? If yes, then let the noise pass like wind. As Seneca said, a great mind can rise above insults. It is more admirable to disregard them than to answer them. So what should we do when people judge us unfairly? We acknowledge it and let it go. We don't have to fight, argue, or prove anything. We simply return to what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, our peace. And ironically, this quiet strength is what earns real respect. Not the kind won through popularity, but the kind that flows from character. This doesn't mean we become indifferent to people. The Stoics valued community, justice, and human connection, but they knew the line. Care for others, yes. Be enslaved by their opinions, no. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to live truthfully, to walk your own path, and to hold your dignity even when it's not applauded. So the next time you're misunderstood, pause. The next time someone judges you, breathe. And ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, let it go. Not with anger, not with pride, but with calm detachment. Because the only thing worse than being judged unfairly is letting that judgment define who you are. In the end, the Stoic knows freedom doesn't come from controlling what people think. It comes from no longer needing to. Let them think what they will. You have a life to live. Seneca on the folly of people-pleasing. Why do we try so hard to be liked? Why do we say yes when we want to say no? Hide our truth to avoid judgment? Go along with things just to keep the peace? Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher, saw this habit not just as unwise, but as dangerous. To him, the constant urge to please others was a quiet form of slavery. You may appear free on the outside, but inside, you're chained to opinions that aren't even your own. He wrote, "What difference does it make how many people praise you if you have no respect for yourself?" In other words, applause is meaningless if it costs your dignity. Seneca saw that many people live second-hand lives. They follow the crowd, chase trends, copy opinions, not out of love or purpose, but out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being left out, fear of standing alone. But to the Stoics, truth begins when you stop performing, when you no longer need the crowd to clap in order to know your worth. Seneca believed that people-pleasing erodes the soul. It may feel polite, even noble, but over time, it replaces your inner compass with the shifting winds of others' expectations. You lose touch with what you think, what you value, and who you truly are. Why is this so dangerous? Because a person who is always trying to please cannot live with clarity. They say what others want to hear. They do what they think will earn praise. They choose the safe path, not the honest one. And in doing so, they sacrifice the very thing that makes a human free: the ability to think and live by reason, not fear. Seneca did not preach rebellion for the sake of pride. He wasn't against kindness or harmony, but he believed that integrity must come before approval, that your conscience must guide you, even when it makes others uncomfortable. He warned, the man who seeks the approval of the crowd has made them his master. And once you hand over your self-respect in exchange for applause, you'll always be chasing it. You'll never feel enough, because the crowd is never satisfied, and their opinions change like the wind. The Stoic path is different. It doesn't require arrogance or isolation, but it does demand courage. Courage to live by principle, not popularity. Courage to be honest, even when it's awkward. Courage to be disliked, if that's the price of staying true. Seneca once advised his student Lucilius to choose a few good people to admire, but never to bend himself just to fit in with the many. Because popularity is cheap, wisdom is rare, and the more you try to please everyone, the more you lose yourself. So what's the alternative? You live simply, you speak truthfully, you choose your values, not your image, as your compass. You treat others with respect, but not at the expense of your own. You learn to be content being misunderstood by some as long as you are at peace with yourself. And slowly something shifts. You stop chasing validation. You start living with quiet conviction, and that peace, that confidence, it no longer depends on applause. Seneca knew that true joy doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being aligned with nature, with reason, with who you are when no one's watching. So the next time you're tempted to perform, to flatter, to shrink who you are just to fit in, pause. Ask yourself, If I win their praise but lose my self-respect, is it worth it? The Stoic answer is no, because the approval of the world is fleeting, but the respect of your own soul, that lasts. Reason versus reputation. What should truly guide you? In every life, there comes a moment when we must choose between what is reasonable and what is popular, between the quiet voice of our own wisdom and the loud echo of the crowd's approval, between living with clarity or performing for reputation. To the Stoics, the choice was always clear. Follow reason, not reputation. But that's not how most of the world works. From a young age, we're taught to build a name, impress others, be seen. We chase reputation like it's the measure of who we are: titles, likes, applause, praise. But what is reputation, really? It's not who you are. It's who others think you are. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your life managing that illusion instead of becoming your true self. The Stoics saw this danger long ago. Seneca warned against the addiction to praise. Epictetus called reputation one of the externals, meaning it lies outside our control. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote in his private journal, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." In other words, if you want to be free, let reason, not reputation, guide you. What is reason? It's your ability to think clearly, to judge wisely, to choose with integrity, even when it costs you something. Reason is your inner compass, the part of you that sees truth, even when it's inconvenient. But reputation? It's fog. It shifts. One moment they admire you, the next they criticize. You can't hold on to it. You can't trust it. And worst of all, you can't grow if you're constantly shaping yourself to match it. The Stoic teaches, let the crowd talk. Let your reputation rise or fall like the tide. That is not your concern. Your concern is your character, not how others see you, but who you actually are. This isn't an invitation to be careless or arrogant. The Stoic doesn't disregard the world. They just don't become a slave to it. They still speak with respect. They still contribute, care, serve, but they do it from a place of principle, not performance. That's the key. Live by reason and your conscience is your guide. Live by reputation and you're always asking, what will they think? The first path brings peace. The second brings anxiety. You can feel the difference. When you act according to your values, there's a deep, quiet confidence. Even if no one claps, even if no one notices, you know you live true. That's enough. But when you act just to protect an image, there's tension. You smile, but it feels hollow. You win approval, but you lose sleep. You gain attention, but lose respect for yourself. The Stoics didn't seek fame, they sought freedom. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." And this includes the craving for recognition. Wanting to be seen as good is not the same as being good. Wanting to be known as wise is not the same as choosing wisdom when no one is watching. Reputation might impress others, but only reason can keep you whole. So the next time you're faced with a decision, ask yourself this: am I doing this because it's right or because it will look good? If the answer is to look good, pause. You're about to trade your peace for a performance. But if the answer is because it's right, even if it's unpopular, even if it's misunderstood, then you're on the Stoic path. You're choosing self-respect over spotlight, substance over show. And that choice, that's freedom. Because in a world where everyone is chasing approval, the one who moves by reason walks a different path, quieter perhaps, but far more powerful. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. Not praise, not fame, not what they say. Do the right thing for the right reason, and let that be enough. Approval is temporary, but integrity is eternal. In a world that celebrates being liked, followed, praised, and admired, it's easy to forget this truth. Approval fades. But who you are, your integrity, lasts. You can be a hero today and a villain tomorrow in the eyes of the crowd. Public opinion changes with the wind. One mistake, one rumor, one misunderstood word, and applause turns to silence or even shame. The Stoics knew this. That's why they taught us not to live for approval, but for virtue, not to chase praise, but to live by principles. Seneca wrote, "What is the point of having everyone praise you if you cannot praise yourself?" He was reminding us, you can impress the world and still disappoint your own soul. To the Stoic, what matters isn't what others say about you, but how you carry yourself when no one is watching. That's integrity. That's character. That's your inner compass. The fragility of approval. Approval feels good. It's human to want to be accepted, respected, appreciated. But when that desire becomes a need, when we begin to depend on approval for our sense of worth, we give away our freedom. Epictetus warned, if you want to be free, learn to let go of what is not in your control. And people's opinions? That's at the top of the list of things you can't control. You may do your best. You may act with kindness, clarity, and wisdom. But how someone interprets your actions, that's their lens, not your truth. The danger is this: the more we shape ourselves to fit others' expectations, the more we drift from who we truly are. We become strangers to ourselves, experts in performance, but amateurs in peace. Integrity, the inner anchor. Integrity, on the other hand, is unchanging. It's what keeps you grounded when the world spins. It's the quiet knowing that you've lived in alignment with your values even when no one notices. Marcus Aurelius, who faced constant judgment as emperor, wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." In other words, the true storm isn't what people say, it's how deeply we believe we must please them. When you live with integrity, you're no longer at the mercy of others' opinions. You no longer have to perform. You simply show up, honest, present, free. You do the right thing not because it will get applause, but because it is right. And that's power. The peace of inner approval. Approval comes and goes. Integrity stays. It becomes your shield against regret, your peace at night, your quiet strength in the face of criticism. The Stoics didn't seek fame. They sought freedom, and they found it in self-respect. When Marcus Aurelius walked through the palaces of Rome surrounded by flattery and gossip, he reminded himself daily that none of it mattered unless he lived justly, with discipline and truth. He didn't need the crowd to agree. He needed to be proud of the man he saw in the mirror. That's the lesson. Don't trade your soul for applause. Let the world cheer if it will, but do not build your life around the cheering, because applause fades, but self-respect endures. A question to leave with. So next time you're tempted to say what sounds good instead of what's true, next time you feel the urge to perform, to impress, to be liked, pause. Ask yourself, will I still respect myself if I do this? That question may cost you approval, but it will give you something greater: peace. Because while the world forgets, while reputations rise and fall, integrity is yours to keep. And in the end, it's not how many people applauded you that matters. It's whether you lived in truth. And that's eternal. Silence over performance, the Stoic approach to dignity. In a world that rewards performance, loud opinions, and constant self-promotion, choosing silence can feel like invisibility. But the Stoics saw it differently. To them, silence wasn't weakness. It was power. It was dignity. While others raced to be seen, the Stoic chose to be steady. While others fought to be heard, the Stoic sought to understand. Because the truly strong don't need to perform. They just live with truth, with reason, and with quiet self-respect. Dignity doesn't shout. We've been taught that confidence must be loud, that to matter, we must constantly share, prove, and impress. But much of that urgency comes from insecurity. The Stoics knew that true dignity is calm. It's not a show. It doesn't beg for applause. It stands quietly in its own space, whole and unshaken. Epictetus said, "If someone speaks ill of you, do not defend yourself. Simply say, 'He obviously doesn't know me very well.'" This isn't arrogance, it's strength. It's choosing not to enter the stage where ego plays. It's saying, "I don't need to perform for your approval. I know who I am." The wisdom of restraint. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled the Roman Empire, could have used power to crush any critic, but instead he practiced restraint. He wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." This is Stoic dignity, choosing action over argument, character over applause. You don't fight noise with more noise, you meet it with clarity, and then you move on. The Stoic doesn't waste life explaining themselves to those who refuse to listen, because every moment spent performing for others is a moment lost from your own growth. Why silence is not emptiness. To the Stoics, silence isn't passive, it's active presence. It's observing before reacting, thinking before speaking, choosing the wise path over the impulsive one. Seneca reminded us, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." There are times when speaking is needed, when truth must be said, But much of what we say in life is noise, self-defense, self-praise, self-doubt dressed in performance. The Stoic pauses, reflects, then speaks if it serves virtue, not vanity. This is not silence out of fear, it's silence rooted in strength. The performance trap. Modern life makes performance feel like survival. We perform online to gain attention. We perform at work to feel worthy. We even perform in relationships, afraid of not being enough. But each performance pulls us further from ourselves. The Stoic way invites a radical shift. Let go of the act. Return to essence. Be the same person in private as you are in public. Not because you want to impress, but because your soul deserves peace. And peace doesn't come from applause. It comes from alignment with your values, your truth, your nature. The quiet power of being. There's something quietly powerful about the person who doesn't explain everything, who doesn't need the last word, who doesn't rush to prove themselves. That person carries gravity, not because they are loud, but because they are real. The Stoics weren't loud men. They weren't flashy. They were men of thought, of principle, of quiet strength. In silence, they met themselves. In silence, they found clarity. In silence, they became free. And so can we. A final thought. Ask yourself, what am I trying to prove and to whom? And then go deeper. Who would I be if I no longer needed to perform? That space, beneath performance, beneath the noise, that's where your dignity lives. That's where your power returns. And that's where the Stoic walks. Not loudly, not proudly, but calmly. Because when you are rooted in truth, you don't need the world to understand. You just need to live it, quietly, courageously, and without apology. You owe the world your character, not your compliance. There comes a point in every life when we must ask a hard question. Am I living to be accepted, or am I living to be true? The answer defines everything. Too many of us shrink to fit into spaces we were never meant to belong. We soften our voices, bend our values, and wear masks, not because we want to, but because we fear what happens if we don't. But the Stoics had no interest in pleasing the world. Their concern was something deeper, something stronger: character. The highest obligation, integrity. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the work, not to adjust yourself to others' expectations, but to align yourself with your principles. The Stoic is not concerned with applause, but with honesty, not with reputation, but with integrity. Because to compromise your values for acceptance is to sell your soul for something that never belonged to you. Character over compliance. There is a quiet rebellion in living by your own principles. It means saying no when it's easier to say yes. It means walking away when the crowd runs toward. It means standing still, even if you're the only one who does. This isn't pride, it's dignity. The Stoics taught that virtue is the only true good. Not wealth, not status, not popularity. Just the consistent practice of courage, honesty, temperance, and justice. And that virtue must be lived from within, not borrowed from the opinions of others. You were not meant to shrink. How many times have you made yourself smaller to make others comfortable? How many moments have you silenced your truth, smiled when you disagreed, or hid your difference just to keep the peace? The Stoics would remind you, peace without truth is not peace, it's surrender. You were not made to shrink. You were not made to bend into shapes that hurt your spirit. You were made to be free. And freedom starts by reclaiming your voice, quietly, firmly, with reason and respect. The danger of living for approval. Seneca warned that those who live for applause will always be slaves. He who follows the crowd will never be followed by his own soul. Because the crowd changes. Their moods shift. Their love is conditional. If you stake your identity on their approval, you'll spend your life chasing shadows. But when you return to your center, your principles, your clarity, your truth, suddenly you don't need the world to agree. You just need to live well. Freedom doesn't always feel good. Choosing character over compliance won't always feel easy. You may lose followers, you may disappoint others, you may walk alone, but that loneliness is sacred. It means you are not abandoning yourself. The Stoics didn't seek comfort, they sought truth. And the truth is this: your self-respect matters more than anyone's approval. That's not selfish, that's wisdom. Final reflection: be free. So ask yourself, what part of me have I silenced to fit in? What truth have I delayed to keep the peace? And now ask, what if I chose freedom instead? You don't owe the world your silence. You don't owe the world your compliance. You owe the world your character. The world may or may not approve, but your soul will finally breathe, because you are not here to be liked. You are here to be free.